For decades, people have been taught a comforting story. Work for 40 years, save a little, contribute to a pension fund, and relax in your golden years. But the truth is far more brutal and far more hidden. The modern retirement system was never designed for a world where people live longer, earn less, and face rising costs at every stage of life. What was once a safety net has quietly transformed into a ticking time bomb. The original pension models were built in the mid-20th century, at a time when the average person did not live much beyond 65. Companies could easily promise lifelong payouts because lifelong really meant 5 to 7 years. But today, people routinely live into their 80s and 90s. That means every retiree is now collecting 2 or even 3 decades of payments from a system that was engineered for only one. On top of that, the number of workers per retiree has collapsed. In the 1950s, there were 16 workers supporting one retiree. Today, in many countries, that ratio is hovering around 2 workers for each retiree and shrinking. This mathematical imbalance alone guarantees collapse. Meanwhile, governments resort to the same desperate strategy: print money, borrow more, and pretend everything is fine. But pensions don't survive inflation. Every dollar created makes future payouts weaker, emptier, more diluted. So even if the system doesn't collapse outright, retirees lose purchasing power over time, slowly, silently, painfully. Most people still believe their pension will be there decades from now, but behind the curtain, the math is already broken. The cracks are widening. The countdown has begun, and by 2035, the illusion will finally shatter. The collapse of global pension systems isn't happening because of bad accounting alone. It's happening because the math of human civilization has changed forever. For decades, modern economies were built on one simple assumption: there would always be more young workers than old retirees. That ratio powered every pension promise, every retirement plan, every social security check, and every healthcare budget. But today, that foundation has quietly crumbled. Around the world, birth rates have fallen below replacement level. Countries like Japan, South Korea, Italy, Spain, Germany, and even China are aging faster than at any point in human history. There simply aren't enough young people entering the workforce to support the rapidly growing retiree population. This imbalance is what economists call the dependency ratio, and it has reached a breaking point. Imagine a system designed for 5 workers supporting one retiree. Now picture the same system being forced to operate with only 1.5 workers supporting that same retiree. The math isn't just bad, it's impossible. Governments try to patch the problem with higher taxes, immigration, automation, or raising the retirement age, but the gap is too large to close. Every year, fewer people pay into pension funds, while a record number draw from them. Healthcare costs explode as populations age. Pension payouts increase as people live longer than the system ever predicted. Meanwhile, the shrinking workforce is overburdened, underpaid, and increasingly unable to save for their own future. This demographic implosion isn't a future problem. It's a current disaster disguised by political silence. By 2035, many pension systems will face the unavoidable truth: they were built for a world that no longer exists, and collapse is no longer a possibility. It's a timeline. If you want to understand why pension systems are heading toward collapse by 2035, you don't need politics, ideology, or conspiracy theories. You only need basic math, and that math is terrifyingly simple. For more than half a century, pension systems across the world were built on a foundational assumption: there will always be more young people working than old people retiring. This was true in the 1960s, the 70s, even the 80s. A single worker could support multiple retirees. Governments designed retirement ages, contribution ratios, and benefit structures around that comfortable reality. But that reality is gone. Today, birth rates in almost every developed country have collapsed. Fertility rates are at historic lows, far below the replacement level of 2.1. At the same time, life expectancy has increased, meaning people live longer and collect benefits for more years than pension systems were originally designed to support. So now the equation looks like this: more retirees plus fewer workers plus longer payouts equals mathematically guaranteed collapse. By 2035, some countries will have one retiree for every one worker, making the original pension model impossible to sustain. Governments try to mask this crisis by raising retirement ages, increasing payroll taxes, or shrinking benefits quietly through inflation. But these are temporary patches, not solutions. Even worse, many pension funds assume decades of high stock market returns to stay solvent. But as economies slow and debt levels explode, those optimistic projections no longer match reality. This isn't a political issue. It's not ideological. It's a simple mathematical imbalance that no government policy can reverse in time. The demographic clock is ticking, and by 2035, pension systems won't crack, they will break outright. One of the most devastating forces behind the collapse of global pension systems is something governments rarely address openly: the worker crisis. Every pension system in the world is built on a simple mathematical assumption that there will always be enough young workers paying taxes to support retirees. For decades, this worked reasonably well. But today, that equation has completely fallen apart. Across Europe, North America, China, Japan, and even parts of the developing world, birth rates have fallen below replacement levels. This means societies are producing fewer children than needed to maintain their population size. At the same time, life expectancy has increased, meaning people live longer, collect benefits for more years, and require more healthcare. The result is a massive imbalance. Too many retirees, too few workers. In the 1970s, there were 6 to 7 workers supporting one retiree in many countries. Today, that number has collapsed to 2 workers per retiree in places like the US, and even worse in Japan and Italy. By 2035, the ratio could fall to 1.5 workers per retiree, a point at which the math simply doesn't work anymore. Governments try to hide this crisis with temporary solutions: raising retirement ages, increasing taxes, printing money, or borrowing trillions. But these are band-aids, not solutions. The core issue remains: a shrinking workforce cannot sustain an aging population on the old pension model. This worker crisis also creates indirect pain. Younger generations face lower wages, higher taxes, and less job stability, meaning they struggle to save for their own retirement while also funding the previous generation's benefits. In short, the pension system isn't collapsing because of mismanagement alone. It's collapsing because the demographic foundation it was built on has eroded beyond repair. As pension systems move toward a near-certain collapse by 2035, the most important question becomes deeply personal. What can ordinary people do to survive a world where retirement no longer exists? For decades, citizens were told that if they worked hard, paid taxes, and contributed to a pension system, they would be taken care of in old age. But the math no longer works. The demographic pyramid has flipped, debt levels have exploded, and governments can no longer fund what they promised. The first step in surviving the coming retirement crisis is accepting a difficult truth: you will have to rely on yourself far more than on any government or employer. This means shifting from a passive financial mindset to an active survival-oriented one. Building multiple income streams, even small ones, becomes essential. Side businesses, freelancing, digital skills, and investments that generate cash flow will matter far more than traditional savings. Second, individuals must protect themselves from inflation, the silent destroyer of retirement funds. Hard assets, diversified investments, and financial literacy will separate those who cope from those who collapse with the system. Finally, health becomes wealth. In a world where medical costs skyrocket and support systems weaken, staying physically and mentally strong isn't optional. It's a survival strategy. The 2035 pension collapse isn't just an economic event. It's a lifestyle reset. The people who adapt early will not just survive, they will build a new kind of retirement on their own terms.